Today, on this episode of The Cave and the Fire.
The man I want to be is the type of man that's powerful, but leads with kindness towards the world. A strong kindness.
I get to spend time with Gustavo Santos. Gustavo grew up in Brazil and moved when he was about 30 to Canada. The son of a black man and a white woman, Gustavo learned what it meant to be white in a world of dark skin in Brazil, and eventually what it meant to be a person of color in a very white world in British Columbia. Today, he talks a little bit about his cross-cultural experience as a man.
Brazilians are very good at mocking each other. Very good at it. You have to develop this kind of thick skin if you want to survive. Mocking, for Brazilian men in particular, is a way to create a buffer between the other and myself. So even though it comes across as something that's warm and just kind of, oh, we're joking, actually, we're not talking about deep stuff. We're not talking about what really bothers us. We're not talking about our loves or our cares or the things that we really value deep inside.
Gustavo and I met at the Men's Rites of Passage in British Columbia. And today he reflects on what happened for him while he was out in the wild.
I was able to connect with the part of myself that felt like I never had the freedom to do before. By myself, in the woods, with my own thoughts and my own longing and my own desire for a meaningful encounter with what I reckon to be the divine. I had this experience with the divine in a way that I never had before, and in a way that I was not expecting. That's the key for me.
Gustavo bridges many worlds, black, white, Brazilian, Canadian, and also the worlds of faith and the marketplace. As a corporate consultant and someone who's done PhD level research on the marketplace in theology, he brings a unique perspective into what it means to be a man of faith and doubt, spirituality and soul, mind and body, all within the context of work.
Theology, besides being contextual, is experiential. Whatever theology you have, you bring those things to work whenever you do work. And how do we reflect on these connections between faith and work? What do I really care about? And I think it was the people. I care what the directors, VPs, and CEOs were going through more than what the company was going through.
Gustavo Santos. Join me as we hear a little bit more from him and his life story.
Well, hi and welcome. My name is Ned Abenroth, and today I get to hang out with somebody who I've really just recently got to know, but who I've already started to fall in love with. This is just a beautiful man, Gustavo Santos. Welcome, Gustavo. Thanks for taking some time out to hang out together.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. So, Gustavo, you're 41, and you're from Brazil, São Paulo, you're close to São Paulo. And not too long ago, you found yourself moving up to Vancouver, British Columbia, which is where, I met you. I would love just to hear a little bit about your life growing up for you and how it was that you made this massive change going from Brazil and the decision to come up and start a master's and even a PhD program up in Vancouver.
Yeah, sure. So I was born to working class family in Brazil. Work has always been like a huge part of my parents' life. And growing up, I always kind of, heard all of these kind of narratives around work and how work is kind of central to the life we had. They were, I would say, more like on the nominal side of Christians. So their families were kind of Christian people around us all the time. But I started going to church, for example, when I was 12. So up to that point, I didn't have any exposure to church life and all that. And then at some point, that became part of my life, like going to church and all that. So working class, Christian most of the time. And yeah, I mean, the work has a huge value part of it, part of my growing up. And we didn't have any kind of luxury growing up, but it was a comfortable life. I can't say there was like any kind of problems or issues, having like the basic stuff for life to happen. So much so that my parents were able to give me like good education for Brazilian standards, and I was able to, go places with my profession and really decide what to do, which is, I think, it's a privilege for most of those who are able to choose their profession or choose what to do for
Yeah.
work. That's a real privilege. My parents themselves did not have that, so that was part of my, there was already a shift there. They had to take the jobs that were available to them. I, on the other hand, my brother and I actually have a brother. We were able to choose what to do for a career, professionally, and all that. So I did my undergrad in statistics, and statistics kind of gives you I can opening like to so many things. I was doing statistics and data analysis before big data and AI was cool. Like I was doing that. It was growing as a field, but I what I found interesting about that is that in my description, it was the more human of the sciences, because in statistics, like no number has meaning in itself. Every single number is connected to something that happening in real life. It's either people, demographics, or statistics about health or anything like that. So that gave me an opportunity to do like a series of like different things in life, and I ended up like maybe 10 years in like my career. I ended up in management consulting because that was part of the things that I like to do. I could change subjects without changing jobs. My wife was getting a little bit, worried about that. Like, okay, can you stay in one job, please? No, just kidding. She never said that. It's in my mind. And then management consulting was my thing. And then at some point, I remember very vividly, I was in a meeting talking about sales for the next year with a publishing company, my clients. And I remember very vividly this experience, like it's more or less like coming outside of my body, looking at the meeting. It's just like, I don't really care.
Mhm.
I don't care about this at all. This is all, for me at that point, it felt like everything here is a fiction that we're
Mhm.
creating. It's all artificial, right? So for
Mhm.
some reason, I was put in that place of asking myself, what do I really care about? And I think it was the people. I care what the directors, VPs, and CEOs were going through more than what the company was going through, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So I thought, okay. And then I had like I would say like a pretty dramatic episode. I was, getting ready for kind of a Bible study, with my small group, and I was reading like, a passage where Jesus says, "Whoever wants to find their life would lose it, and then whoever loses for my sake will find it." And then at that point, it's just, oh man, I don't know why, but like that hit me like really in the middle of my stomach. Just, oh shit, I'm kind of looking for my own life here.
Mhm.
Like what I'm trying to do, like living out this fiction. And then I was just about to go somewhere else in the world to do my MBA. And I was between like France and the United States and the UK. And France would be like my first choice. But then at some point, like when this happened, just like, no, I don't think I want to do an MBA anymore, because it's going to be like 10 or 15 years of my life dedicated to this. And I don't even see myself there. Like that's not me. The Gustavo at the end of this journey is not the Gustavo I want to become. So that was massive.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, okay, so what do I do then? And then I remember from my time at university, I was very connected to intervarsity. So theology and conversations about faith were kind of always in my mind. It's just like, well, maybe I can do like a little, segue here to do something that's closer to people's deep questions, right? But still connected to this professional kind of development. So I found this school in Vancouver, BC, where I am now, called Regent College, and they have a program that's called Marketplace Theology. And essentially, it was exactly that. It's just like, okay, how do we connect the faith that we all bring in ourselves? Like, whatever theology you have, you bring those things to work whenever you do work. And how do we reflect on these connections between faith and work? And I decided to come. So that was 2015, almost 10 years now. And I decided to come. So my wife and I sold everything we had. It wasn't much. It was like a small bit car and maybe a few, furniture items. And then we came for this adventure that supposedly at that point was like supposed to be like 3 years or so. But then we ended up staying. That's like another part of the conversation, but that's how we got here. So, yeah.
And so in the midst of that, I mean, just a huge amount of sorting out what it meant for you to be Brazilian, what it meant for you to be Canadian. I don't know if you consider yourself a Brazilian Canadian. I'm not sure. We all are like an amalgamation of these various identities and masks that we put on. And you're coming from all these cultural perspectives that would have been alive for you down there. That all of a sudden you're in just a different milieu. What has that been sorting out? In particular, I'd be curious a little bit about masculinity for you. What have you noticed about the differences between where you grew up and where you are now? Yeah, just speak to that for a bit.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Well, first of all, I think I became more Brazilian after I came here. That's clear to me. It's the whole story of like the fish in the water, right? Like, so when you don't have like anything else to contrast your experience, you don't really know what you are about. I think coming here and being kind of displaced from my, natural habitat, let's say, brought me to this place of contrasting my experiences here to my experiences there. And then it turned into a journey of knowing more of myself as a man, as a person, as an immigrant, as a professional. All these things, all these dimensions were kind of being somehow challenged. I would say that becoming more Brazilian here made me, one, value more of my culture and my tradition back in Brazil. And at the same time, it gave me another opportunity to look at things that I did not like about our culture as well. So I think it was the good, the bad, and the ugly coming out together. Just like, there are some things that we do that really don't necessarily, click with me anymore. And I can give you like one very clear example. We as Brazilians, particularly men, are very good at mocking each other. Very good at it. To the point where you find yourself in an environment where you have to develop this kind of thick skin if you want to survive, among men, among other men. I don't think women in Brazil do the same. So that's a very kind of distinctive characteristic of men in Brazil. So what that does is if you're loved or if we like you, we're going to bring you to our group. One sign of that love we feel for you is that we're going to mock you. We're going to mock you to the point of like, making jokes about you, probably how the way you look, probably the things you say, the way you dress, like anything could be a reason for that. When I came here, I realized that I never, ever liked it. But I learned how to do it. I learned how to survive through it. And it was when I came here and I interacted with other Brazilians here that I realized, oh, that doesn't click anymore. You know, when they were trying to connect that way, it's just, wait a second, that's not okay. I don't like that personally, but like as a trait of a culture, I don't think it's the most flattering one, right? Like being able like to mock anybody, it's just like so. My provisional conclusion about that is that mocking for Brazilian men in particular is a way to create a barrier or like a buffer between the other and myself, right? So even though it comes across as something that's warm and just kind of, oh, we're joking, we're all that, actually, we're not talking about deep stuff. We're not talking about what really bothers us. We're not talking about our loves or our cares or the things that we really value deep inside. So that is a way or mechanism to create like a barrier or a buffer between two people or more in a group that in a way protects you from being deep, from
Yeah.
being, direct, or for being more intentional about your emotions even, right? So when I realized that, it's just like, oh, I have to unlearn that now, right? It wasn't very difficult because I didn't like it. So it was kind of, in that sense, was easy on the one hand just to abandon that practice for myself. But it was hard when I was interacting with other Brazilians, for example, because I wasn't
Mhm.
there anymore. It's just like, well, and it's really hard to explain this, like in a group, for example, to say, hey guys, let me just tell you, this is a mechanism you're using, that, like that. That
Sure.
wouldn't fly,
Sure. Yep.
right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So I think that's, for me, that's a very clear example of like masculine kind of characteristic that I brought with me, but like has been challenged since then. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's fascinating because so much of what we think of masculinity, of course, is culturally contextualized.
Yep.
And so what you see as masculine in one culture is very different than what you might see as masculine in a totally different culture. And to some level, it is only when we leave the place in which we maybe are most familiar and start to experience other places that we have any kind of perspective on where we are from ourselves. So, um,
100%.
yeah, absolutely. So, somewhere in the midst of this, I mean, you continued your journey and you ran into Marcoux and
Mhm.
into doing consulting up in British
Mhm.
Columbia, and you encountered Illuman. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
curious to know what that experience has been like for you.
Mhm. Yeah. So yeah, I think there's a backstory to that. So when I came to do my master's and then study that kind of connection between faith and work and all that. But that, it turns out, that is also cultural. The way we understand the world, from a work perspective, for example, work ethics, vocation, calling, whatever you want to call it, um, everything is really contextual and culturally embedded, right? And the same thing is true for theology. You know, my theologian friends don't like that very much, but it's true. All theology is contextual, right? And I came to learn the theology, of work and whatever. And I just realized, well, that's not gonna cut it, because for everything I was learning did not really make any sense for people like my parents, for example. You talk about vocation and finding your vocation, and my dad and my mom, like, well, they never had the chance of looking for anything like that. So even the language is kind of, I think it there's something lacking in when you try to be absolute. with your theology that's very contextual, right? So you can only imagine how that kind of creates, a little bit of crisis because, okay, what do I do now then? And then I started kind of going deeper and trying to understand, okay, what kind of theology do I need to make sense of my own life, to make sense of my own parents' lives, right? And I think I started this journey of learning more or expanding my way of thinking. And some people use the word deconstruction, but I think in my mind it was more like expanding the construction site instead of you know deconstructing whatever was there. Like if you think of a construction site, it was just like no, I need to just expand a little bit more of my little kind of boundaries here. And as I started thinking about these things, okay, what does theology as a whole means to my own kind of story? I started questioning, of course, like things that were taken for granted, things that I was learning and hearing as taken for granted for most of the people around me. I started questioning, okay, is this also good for me? Is this also, does that make sense to me as well? Does that, cover or helps me to explain my own trajectory up to this point? And many of these questions were kind of, well, no, but then what, right? Well, yeah, you need some like a different paradigm, but like, what now? And then Marco is a good friend, and met him. I mean, my wife knew Marco like since 2012, I would say, and then because of the work they did for the same organization. My wife used to work for this organization in Brazil, and Marco was the founder of this organization here in Canada. And so we knew each other. Then I shared with him like this moment that I was going through like a couple years ago. And I shared, hey, I'm going through these things. I'm questioning a lot of the stuff, trying to find my own way, as a man in the world and all that. And at some point, like he said, I think I can tell you about a group that you might be interested in. Like it was very gentle, very gentle. These questions, because himself, like he's gone through these same questions or a similar journey, and then Illumen had kind of be a space for him to explore that. So he told me about that. I'm just like, okay, I'll check them out. And then I went to a council that was actually at his place. And to be honest, I was just like, I don't really understand what's going on here, but I feel it's good. I feel it's good. Like there's something here that's good.
And
And yeah, go ahead.
And let's just say what a council even is for people who don't
Yeah.
know. A council is one way that it's actually, kind of an ancient technology of how to be together and hold
Mhm.
conversation of a different nature that we see in groups all over, really all over the world. There's been council practices. And so it's something that Illumin uses as a way of talking about the things that are most important, and particularly as a way of coming to have a kind of a generative conversation with your own story, with your own experience, as well as really listening deeply to the experiences of others and learning just a tremendous amount about not only yourself, but others, and just the way that things are in the midst of this kind of very intentional, sometimes rather structured way of holding a conversation. So that's what you stepped right into, not knowing anything about what it
Exactly.
was.
Exactly. Yeah. So, well, for me, it was like a bunch of guys in a circle talking about themselves in a very deep way. That's what I got from that time. And I think what really struck me was, well, first the diversity of like ages around the circle, and the humility of like very experienced and seasoned, you know, man, um, being so attentive to each other, being so open to each other, there wasn't at all any sense of competition, or in my case, what was important for me, like no, like not a hint of like any mockery or disrespect. Like, so that resonated because, oh, this is a space where everybody seems to be respectful, like deeply respectful for each other's journey. So that was like inviting to me. So
Mhm.
I was just like, well, I don't know what this is, but like I like it, you know. Like, I was just like, okay, I think I could do something like that. And then as I started going to these councils, Marku told me about the man's rites of passage, which is something you might want to give also like a short explanation what that is, because it's it it's hard for me to explain what that is.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, so in a nutshell, the men's rites of
yeah.
passage was a kind of an event that Richard Rohr created, a Franciscan who lives down in the desert of New Mexico. And he invented it kind of back in the 90s, along with some trusted friends. And it's been a transformative experience that has been done all over the world now in multiple countries for thousands and thousands of men who've gone through this. And not to get too much into the content of it, I mean, you could speak to whatever it is you want to from it, but safe to say that it's been a way for men to make some significant steps deeper into like a robust life that is rather than the one that had been kind of written for them by what it meant to be a man growing up. It's like it's a way of finding a deeper journey. So and for Richard would have said that it's the beginning into the journey of descent, which
Mm,
that in itself is probably a word that we would have to unpack a bit as well. But so you
mhm.
found out about this, and you were crazy enough to say yes.
Yes, I was. Yeah, I mean, I think with Marku, like, and I had Marku as more or less like as this guide as well through like the journey with Illumin. So he would say, "Well, I think you're ready for that. I think it's going to be good for you." And then I was just kind of because he's my friend, I just trust him and just kind of okay, I'll do it. So the rites of passage, they're kind of they're retreat form, right? Like, so we go to a place that's kind of usually far from where you are usually, and we stay there for a few days. So one of these days we have some time, we call it solo time or like wilderness time. I'm not sure anybody, like everybody has like a different name for that, but like essentially I went to the woods to stay there for hours, right? Like just by myself, trying to find a very small space. So everybody's doing this. And there are a few like, prompts and kind of things that you should be looking for in that time that's suggested by the people that were kind of, creating this space for us. But for me, I think what really happened was I was able to connect with the part of myself that I felt like I never had the freedom to do before.
Hmm.
I think I was by myself in the woods with my own thoughts and my own longings, I guess. That's part of it. And my own kind of desire for a meaningful encounter with what I reckon to be the divine, right? So I had a lot of like theology in here, but I didn't have like much of that experience in here. It's just like, well,
Hmm.
I know a lot of all the books I read and the papers I wrote, and but I was getting to a point where I was convinced, and I'm still convinced, that theology, besides being contextual, is experiential. Whatever we write down and whatever the people who wrote theology before write down is coming from an experience with the divine. And it's just our best attempt to codify that. So if I read something that's kind of theologically charged, but I'm removed from the experience that kind of created that writing, I might not get anything, right?
Mhm.
I'm just getting like a script of something that I don't really know about. So that point for me, and that retreat, that chunk of hours was the time when I had my own experience with the divine that was unmediated by any kind of, script or anything. And I never had that before. So I'm not saying that it was just that moment, because everything we're doing in the retreat before that time and everything we did after that was kind of supporting that moment. So I think it's important to emphasize that it wasn't like an isolated thing. Oh, I went to the woods and then boom. No, there was like a lot of preparation for that moment during the retreat, and then after, well, as well, like some kind of a accompaniment of that kind of experience and kind of the follow up of that. But that moment, I I think I had this experience with the divine in a way that I never had before, and in a way that I was not expecting to have. I think that's the key for me. It's just like I don't think I could have made that up. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
If you ask me, okay, let's create a script for your experience with God or the divine here. I would give it like a script, but like it wouldn't be like that at all. So that in a way kind of gives me the sense of, oh shit, that really happened. It's just like, oh, there's something else here that I'm not in control, but I am so glad that's here.
Mhm.
And I think just a few things to highlight from that experience. One, I think I was connected to my ancestry in a way that I'd never been before. I think there's something about the freedom and the way of enjoying nature as a doorway for these encounters that kind of changed for me forever, I think. And the other thing is really how how much of the theological scripts are insufficient to describe any of that. Like
Mhm.
they're good guides. They make a lot of sense, and they kind of, okay, that's good work, and it helps us to keep track of what we're doing. But when the actual experience happens, like whatever, like you can write whatever you want. It's just like when you're there, that kind of, it's a different kind of muscle in your soul that's being flexed. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
I'll just
Mhm.
stop there for now. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Oh, it's wonderful, wonderful. Yeah. And then that theme for you was picked up, I think, at Awaken this fall, which the theme, you mentioned getting in touch with your ancestors, and that was the entire theme for, I mean, just coincidentally,
That's right.
that
That's
was
right.
the theme for Awaken, was getting in touch with your ancestors. And I know for you, I mean, all of our ancestral stories are fraught and mixed and contain both blessing and, of course, like trauma and wound. Uh,
Mhm.
Talk a little bit about how you've looked at your ancestors and come to understand your own experience in Brazil and maybe even in Canada as well differently because of these experiences.
Yeah. So I think growing up, as I mentioned in the beginning, growing up in that context, you don't have much clarity about the differences and the contrasts. But one thing that growing up, I could see very clearly growing up was there was a clear distinction in my own family and in my own upbringing due to the fact that my dad is a black man and my mom is a white woman in Brazil. So I came like this light, kind of light dark skin, but like because of the color of my skin, I got away with a lot in Brazil. Things that my dad wouldn't
Mm.
get away with. you know. But I think I was raised as a white boy. In my mind, I was always actually hanging out with the white folks, and part of my family I was more exposed to was my mom's side as well. Even though like there was always like a lot of love and care from both sides, my exposure was more on the white side of the family. In retrospect, I feel like my dad was somehow also like protecting me, like even unconsciously protecting me from the experience of like black people in Brazil. And it was like there was a lot of poverty as well on his side of the family, good bunch of drug abuse, and I had a few cousins that kind of OD'd. Crime was part of it as well. So there was some kind of baggage that I feel like my dad was trying to, protect me from in a way, because he got away like in his own life, and he didn't want me to be exposed to that side. And again, like I'm not talking about the people, but it's just the environment. I think I just wanted to make that clear for people. It's just not, this is not, these were people that I shouldn't be exposed to. That's not what this is about. I was with the people a lot of the time, but it's just like the environment, the trails that you can follow sometimes and pursue when you're there, that he was kind of probably trying to protect me from. And I'm grateful for that as well. Like I think it was his way of loving me and protecting me. So in that context, I grew up, as I said, like feeling that I was a white boy. Like if I keep my hair short enough, if I wear like the right clothes, I'll pass, right? Like I'm okay. But then I came to Canada, and that's I don't pass at all, right? And then I was just like, oh, and then I started like encountering situations that were very similar to what my dad would go through in Brazil. So I don't know, when we tried to rent a place, you know, a couple of Canadians kind of interviewing us for the place, and it didn't matter how much I told them about like my credentials and where I was working. Like I could see in their faces that, well, we're not renting to you, right? Like that kind of stuff. Okay, okay. And then that kind of thing. When you enter a store, and there's a very big coincidence that when you enter the store, the security guard starts following you like for a walk around, just like, oh, it was kind of random, yeah, but it just happened that when you enter the store that he goes around in jobs, promotions, and that kind of stuff that you kind of overlooked because you don't have the right credentials. It doesn't really matter how many boxes you're ticking. These are not the right boxes. It's like they're looking for something or someone who's different from you, right? So when I started kind of going through these things, I needed like more grounding, I guess, I in terms of identity. And because when you're in that place, you kind of start questioning yourself, like, who am I?
Yeah.
I'm not that person. I'm not these people. Like I'm not this person that they want me to be. Who am I really? Like what? How am I in the world, and how am I supposed to deal with these things, in the world? So I think with the experience about, in a way, encountering my ancestors and learning so much about ancestry in general, like in that Awaken, for example, the event you mentioned, gave me the freedom or the liberty or the space to ground myself in that identity. My African ancestors, both with the trauma and the blessing,
Mm-hmm.
holding those two things together. And one thing that I think I got from those moments was they went through things, and they did not have the chance to solve many of the problems that they went through. But now I have a different circumstance around me that allows me to fix or to heal, maybe it's the right word, not fix, but heal some of that trauma for myself. And in a way, honoring the healing that they could not do.
Mm-hmm.
So it is more or less like if I am able somehow, and I think Illumin helps me with that because of the environment, if I'm able to heal my own traumas, my own set of traumas, identity related, I am honoring my ancestors that could not do it because their lives in the world was just kind of a sort of a bunch of pain, and that could not really resist sometimes the structures. But because I'm now in a different scenario, by healing myself, I am somehow healing their story. And as I transform this pain, as this is, I think it's a Richard thing, right? Like, as I transform this thing, I'm not transmitting it anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to the future generations, the people that I interact with, I am able to offer a way forward that doesn't necessarily transmit the same pain. And it's interesting because it's not ignoring the pain. It's not saying, like, it's not the colorblind kind of, approach. It's not denying the story or the history of Black people in the world. It's not saying that, yeah, denying or saying that it never happened, but it's also not dwelling in a place that's hopeless. It's an invitation to move forward with both things in hand. Just like, well, I carry the pain, and we're not gonna repeat that anymore. But as anybody else, we also have the right, if you will, of like find hope as we move forward as people in this world. So I think it's very complicated. It has ups and downs. There are days that I'm kind of feeling great about these things, and there are days that I'm just kind of, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this anymore. But I think it's a personal journey as well. I have
Mm-hmm.
friends and people who are like in the same kind of situation as I am, or similar circumstances. They have different approaches to this. So it is a personal kind of journey as well. But I think those two things are still true. If we heal, we can heal the past. If we heal, we can also avoid much of the future. So that's, I think,
Mm-hmm.
what the space at Illumin, and I see Illumin as an environment for that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I love the word that I heard so many times there, the word of container. I think that's it's a powerful word. It's just like you have a group of people, a group of men that serve as a container for you to have these experiences and process these things. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
very glad to be part of it. Sorry, I got carried away here, but
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. So, I mean, from where you stand now, what would be some of the qualities of what it means for you to be a man today that might be different than? I mean, you've already mentioned a couple of them, but I'm
yeah.
wondering that might be different from what you grew up with or what the culture is still saying. And I mean,
Hmm.
we've been in such a period now for a number of years where masculinity has been kind of torn down, and
Hmm.
for understandable reasons. I mean, aspects
Yeah.
of some unhealthy ways, like you even drawing kind of putting the light on the culture of mockery within Brazil.
Yeah.
But on the other side of that, there's so much beauty and health
Oh yeah.
and vitality within kind of
Mhm.
some of the masculine archetypes and energies. So I'm just curious for you, what do you celebrate about that? What does it
Yeah.
mean?
I think one thing that I think I learned this from my dad even, and I think that's something I keep, and I think it's I think it holds true like to this day for me. Is I never thought of this as a name for this, but it's more or less like a strong kindness is the
Mm.
word. So it's kind of the man I want to be is a type of man that's powerful in many ways and acknowledges its power, like not only like physically or mentally or spiritually, but acknowledges his power, but leads with kindness towards the world. And that kindness, I think, opens up like, for so many things. I think there are some people thinking about kindness these days that are there's been so illuminating. So kindness means being clear with people, being direct, being vulnerable sometimes, but not necessarily like a vulnerability for the sake of vulnerability, but like for the sake of connection. It is kindness in the sense that you do not have to exercise your power all the time just because you have it. It is a kindness that translates into actual interest in what the other person is saying or doing. It's kind of connection. So I think for me, kindness opens up for so much what it means to be a man in the world. And these are actually very strong images for me. They're not weak at all, right? One thing, particularly like, these kind of things that kindness opens up, I think one thing that I'm learning these days, and I think as man, we are always there's always more space to learn in that, is a kind of vulnerability that exposes what's going inside, opening up for us to learn about ourselves as we interact with other people. I think there's a benefit from real connection to both sides.
Mhm.
It's easy for me as a man, and I'm not sure if this is kind of true for every man, but like the men in my life have been very careful to protect their perceived failures. So it's not necessarily a failure, but like if I understand as a failure, I don't want to show it up. I don't want to expose it. So it could be like, I don't know, financially, relationally, physically. Like if there's something in me that I think it's wrong or it's not up to standard, I want to hide and I want to protect. And that's something I'm learning that's not good. It doesn't do us good. It doesn't do anybody really good because there will be people around us that are somehow longing for that kind of connection with a deeper sense of even identity we have, but they're prevented from that connection because we are not exposing ourselves to that.
Mhm.
So again, like I think I just wanted to emphasize that it's not being like a person who's kind of sharing everything with everybody, but like there are some spaces and layers to connection that we can explore more. And for me, that's the kind of man I want to be. It's just like not afraid of exposing these things because there's nothing really that I will lose by doing that. So
Mhm.
yeah, I'm not sure if that does that make sense to you? Does that resonate at
Absolutely.
all?
Yeah, what I'm hearing, and I think it is interesting. It seems to be something about our generation. We're both in our 40s, and the generations that are coming up behind. Is that the new
Mm,
currency is authenticity. And
mm,
I don't
mm,
know if it has to do with kind of growing up. Like I mean, Facebook was just coming on the scene when I was in college. It's growing, generations that grow up
mm,
in social media and with this sense of being able to kind of
mhm,
see through everything is marketing, everything is spin. Everything is image based, and there's a real poverty in the absence of connection that that this world has engendered for the younger generations. And so there, I mean, there is something about when we're just really real, right? And I appreciate what you said, that there's no need to be fear. There's no need for fear there. When you know who you really are at the deepest level, then you don't have time to do any posturing yourself, and it's hard to tolerate posturing in others. I mean, because it's like, couldn't we have something that's just maybe a little deeper level, right? We, in the Pacific Northwest, where you are, the saying that they have up there is that they're, and by they I'm talking about the men in Illuman, is that they are awakening men to their belovedness, that they might love the world. I do wonder about that, as once you start, and I don't know if that's what you started to touch on your day out in the woods, is a deep sense of who you are that you didn't know before. But when you start to touch the, and it is, I know for myself, I could have said the words all the way into my early 30s that, oh yeah, I'm beloved, but I didn't know them. I hadn't really experienced what that meant, and that there was nothing I could do to earn it, to gain it, to lose it, to enhance it. There's nothing that it's kind of like an untouchable dignity and beauty that is at the core, that has been granted as an inheritance. And once you start to stand in that place, it frees all kinds of things up inside. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And actually, I think in that experience in the woods for me, the means that the divine, I think, kind of found to communicate that to me was being part of this kind of circle of ancestors where I felt that I belonged. It was like a deep, deep, deep feeling of being part of something that I did not necessarily have to do anything to earn. But at the same time, there's nothing I can do to make it like worse. That like I can't really, in the same way that my power is limited to get in, my power is limited to get out. You know what I mean? Like it's both ways. It's just like, well, there's nothing that you can do to earn it, but there's nothing really you can do to get out of this. Like it's not, you're there, right? And I think like that experience was something that was a part of that I never experienced before. But it's being part of something that you being seen, like completely seen, like there's nothing you can hide, but you don't need to, and there's nothing really you need to do to earn because you can't anyway. But it's that's, I think I agree with you 100%. It's like that's what's unlocking the whole identity piece. It's just like, well, it's not where exactly I'm coming from, because we all come from different places, and that's not necessarily like the point. The point is, do we belong? And the answer is yes. Now, can you see it? Can you feel it? Can you experience it? I think it's the longing of all of us. It's just like, how do we experience that kind of belonging, right? And you mentioned like social media, and I think that's what I see, like the behind all this is that longing too. Like, you know, I remember like a few years ago, I saw like a poster at Starbucks. Like it was a job posting saying, "Come and be part of something bigger than yourself." Right? She's like, "Wow, that's very." That's very interesting. Like that language. Like we want to be part of something that's bigger than ourselves, and we want to surrender to that kind of stuff. So I I agree 100% with you. I think that's what's unlocking so many things. But the hard part of this, and this is what I appreciate about Lumen, is just the hard part of this. Like you can't really fabricate this kind of thing. What you can do is to create environments and spaces and hope in a way. So I don't know, like, what's your take on that? But like, as a weaver, as someone like who's been like in this world for so long, I imagine there's a tension for you. It's just like, well, I can create the space or create the conditions, but like that's all I can do because there's nothing else that you can fabricate to create sense of belongingness. I think so. I'd be interested to hear from you. Like, how does that sit with you in terms of the level of control you have or don't have around these things?
Yeah, we're thoroughly involved in a process that is not of our own making. And we're not creating something that wasn't true all along. All we can do is, through series of invitations and practices, help us momentarily drop, off of the kind of the hamster wheel of our ordinary lives. And in the silence, there's the possibility that another voice will speak.
Mm.
To kind of paraphrase Mary Oliver there. But the wonder of it is that it wasn't just available to you then.
Mm.
It was once you've tasted it. Now there are even the great mystics. Often they might have a profound encounter and then spend years. They never have another taste of that again, but they spend the rest of their life kind of unpacking it. But there also is a way in which that's always available, even now in this moment, that our connection to God, to the friend, to the mystery, whatever your words are for the divine, there's a ubiquitousness to presence, to God's presence. And it's usually us that are just are absent. And so all we can do is show up as best we can. And when we do, usually something remarkable happens. So, and I'll just say here as we're kind of wrapping up that I felt it even over technology, being thousands of miles away from you, but even in this conversation, a taste of like, yeah, look at the beauty, look at the work, look at the imagination, and it's rich. It's rich. So,
Yeah, yeah. I think the showing up part is yeah, that's a because I remember now, like when I was discussing with my group, my small group there, my little council in that event, I told them I don't know what's going to happen. I hope I have something to do with the divine, whatever. I'm giving this like chance, but all I'm going to do is to show up. That were exactly my words. I remember that.
mm-hmm.
Oh boy, there was enough.
That was enough.
There was enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Gustavo. What just a rich conversation. Thanks for letting us in a bit into your story and into where you've been, where you are, where you're going, and I'm so grateful that I get to hang out with you on a regular basis. So it's a gift.
Yeah. Thank you. It's a gift to me as well, Ned. You've been very. Uh, I use this word for lack of a better word, but like instrumental in all of this. I think it's not in a utilitarian way. I hope you understand that. But your guidance and your presence has been really instrumental in all this. So I'm very thankful for our friendship as well.
All right. Well, peace and grace and fire to you, my friend. And I'll see you down the
Peace.
road.
Sounds good. Bye.